Hello, my name's Dawn.
And I'm Lee.
And this is Vicky.
Now today we're going to be making a triangular lantern, which will eventually look like this, with obviously a light inside.
You're going to need 3 sticks that are about 30 centimetres each. And then you're going to need 3 longer sticks, about 45 centimetres. We use green floristry sticks or garden sticks, which you can get in any garden centre or town centre pound shop. You're also going to need some paper tape. I'm using brown paper tape, but you could use masking tape or sellotape if you haven't got any. And the first thing you're going to need to do is to cut 3 pieces approximately 10 centimetres long. And then you're going to start with the shorter sticks. And you're going to take 1 piece of tape and stick it on the end and create a tongue. And then you can fold it in slightly, but you must be able to see the end. And then you take your second stick and you place it on the end and then squeeze it together and wrap round to make your first angle. Then you take your second piece of tape and again you make the tongue, making sure you can see the end of the stick. Place the third stick on, right on the end, using your thumbs to squeeze it together and then pull the tape round, and each time it goes round, give it a really good squeeze. And then finally, we're going to do the same joint again, making the tongue and turning the wonky goalpost into a triangle. And every time the tape goes round, give it a really good squeeze. Which makes the base of your lantern. The next thing you're going to do is take your paper tape again, and you're going to get 3 pieces of tape about 15 centimetres long. And with your longer sticks, you're going to take one end and make the same tongue, but this time you're going to go right into the corner of the angle, pull the tape up and round, and every time it goes round, you give that tape a big squeeze. and that will hold your stick in position. If it flops down, don't worry about it, because at the end you're going to bring them all together. And then you continue that with your other 2 sticks. Bit of health and safety, just be aware of the ends of the sticks. And finally, the 3rd one, in it goes right to the end, squeezing round each time. So you have your 3 sticks like that. You're going to need another piece of tape, about 15 centimetres. And this time you're going to take 1 stick, wrap it round so it's a bit like a flag you'd have on a sandcastle, and then bring the stick to meet the 2nd stick, go round, give it a good squeeze, and then your 3rd stick right into the top, so they're just touching, and each time it goes round you give it a squeeze, and we have our pyramid shape. So now we have our frame, we're going to think about the lighting to go into it. There's lots of different types of lights you can use. You could use fairy lights, battery fairy lights, push lights, a battery operated tea light, or a small LED light. All of these are available in shops on the high street or online. Today I'm going to use a battery operated tea light like this and some pliable wire. I'm just going to cut a length of wire, and then I'm going to wrap it round the flame of the lights like that, and then I'm just going to put it into the lantern and wrap it round the top like so. So we're going to cover our frame in cling film. The reason we do that is because of the weather up in the north of England. It just gives us another layer against the wind and the rain. So we take our cling film and wrap it around the top once, and then it's like wrapping a triangular sandwich, and you want to wrap it about 3 or 4 layers, and if you keep moving the frame round, the cling film will find its way, and each time it goes round, just wrap the cling film round, and you keep going. It is quite fiddly, but you will get there in the end. Just keep going round, and you do want to do the bottom as well, because if you're using a push light or fairy lights, you need this base to hold the light. So we keep going. And then when you're finished, just cut the cling film and wrap it round.
Now, an alternative way to doing the cling film, If you find the wrapping a bit too fiddly, you can make your layers before you pop it onto the lantern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my handle. I'm going to put the cable tie through there. I'm just going to zip it shut till I hear it click a couple of times. And then I'm going to use my sellotape to secure that to the frame. So obviously, because that loop is going inside the frame there, that's going to hold the weight of the lantern. So we can see that framework is there. Now I'm going to work with a push light. Obviously with this one, we're not going to have this dangling in the middle of the lantern. This will be on the base. So what I need to do is create a base and leave a little bit of a hole there so that I can get inside to switch the light on and off with my fingers. So I'm just going to put this to one side. What I'm going to do with the cling film, rather than wrapping around, is I'm going to stretch it out on the table, and then I'm going to fold it. And I do this for 5 layers. So this is layer number 3. This is number 4. And this is number 5. Once I've got it there, I just smooth it out with my hands. And I chop it off the roll. I then get my frame again. I place it on top. And I'm just going to chop in from the edge towards each of these 3 corners. If, like me, you find wrapping things around a little bit too fiddly, sometimes this can help. Now I can take each of these 3 sides and I can fold it in. Just getting those corners tucked in. So that's wrapped around the frame there. And then I'll use my sellotape just to get any of the loose edges. Still a little bit there. Just tidy that up. So this gives me a base, which I can then later hold my lamp onto. But I need to be able to get my hand inside. So what I do here is I'm going to cut a little hole. So pierce through with the scissors. And I just chop out one corner. Just enough there for me to get my hand in and out. Obviously, the bigger your hands, the bigger the hole. Secure that with a bit of tape. And here across the bottom of the hole, I'll just put a line of tape to strengthen it up. Then I can take the sticky back off the bottom of this lamp if it'll come. and that can sit in the middle there. So eventually I'll be able to get my hand inside to switch it on and off. Now I'm going to pop this to one side. I then roll out my cling film again. To 5 layers. And you may be wondering, as some people do, why do we use cling film? Because it is a plastic, obviously. Although we do use PVC-free cling film. But you have to remember that these lanterns are not a single-use item. We've made these, well, for many years now in schools and with other groups. And lots of people use them not only for the lantern parade, but they'll give them as gifts, as night lights, or sometimes a church or community group will use them to light the ends of the rows for their Christmas concerts, and they'll keep them stacked up and they'll come out year after year. I think the longest we've known one in use was just over 12 years. So if you make it solid the first time, it will last you a long time. Now, with our piece of cling film, we can bring this back to the lantern. We fold in and we use the tape to secure it. And we do this for each side as we go along. It does take a little bit longer to do it this way. But if you find the challenge of wrapping around a whole pyramid in that way a bit too challenging, this can be a nice alternative. Obviously, you'd end up doing all 3 sides that way.
The next thing we're going to do is put a handle in the top. And how we do that is we take a pair of scissors and very carefully make a hole through the top of your lantern. Then you take it out, and you could use wire, or we use a cable tie, and it goes through the hole and it takes on, and you go round to make the handle, and then just to secure it into a nice loop we just use a bit of sticky tape, and this creates a handle for your lantern. We're now coming to decoration of our lantern. We use wet strength tissue paper that I have cut to size already, so you can lay your triangle onto the piece of tissue and then cut round your lantern, so you can do it in one big piece at a time. You could alternatively cut smaller squares and paste it on like a patchwork. It's completely up to you. So to glue the tissue on, we use PVA glue watered down with water so it looks a bit like single cream. And then we're going to put the glue all on one side, like so. And you can be quite liberal with the glue. And then you also want to go around the edges as well. And then you're going to take one piece of tissue at a time. Just put those down there. And you're going to lay it on the lantern so it's nice and flat, like so. And then with a pair of scissors, you can cut to help you fold round. And then using your brush, Just go round the edges to fold it round. And then again on this side. Don't worry too much if you think it looks very wrinkly, because as the lantern dries, it goes tighter. But once you've got one side on and you're happy that it's all nice and flat, over the top, you're just going to put a layer of the PVA glue, which helps just strengthen your lantern. And then when you're happy with one side, you're going to turn it round and do exactly the same. There we have our covered lantern.
So once you have the base layer of your lantern, this could remain just as it is. If you wanted it to be a single colour, absolutely fine. If you wanted to do tissue in lots of different colours, like a patchwork or stripes or a pattern, absolutely brilliant as well. But one thing we see, or certainly we find works quite nicely, is to use shadow or silhouette. So we've got a couple of shapes that I've cut out already, and you can use templates for this if you want to. And these are done in just ordinary tissue paper. Now, as Dawn mentioned earlier on, the base lantern we've used here is wet strength tissue paper. That's a special kind of tissue that's designed for lanterns so that if it does get wet, it retains its strength, just as it says really in the title. We will provide a link to where to find that at the bottom of the screen. But this, for the decoration, we're just using standard, in this case, black tissue. Now we've purposely picked quite a fiddly shape, a star, for our decoration. I'm going to make sure that the base layer has some glue on it already. Otherwise the star won't stick. And then I need to make sure that my hands are absolutely dry for this point, so I don't stick to the shape. I'm going to place it where I want it to, very gently on the lantern. And then using my brush, and this is the important bit, I always start in the centre of the shape and brush out towards the thinnest parts, so in this case the points. I brush out, start in the middle, brush out, and brush out again. If I were to start at the edges and brush inward, what it will do is it will scrunch my shape up and it will end up in just a mess, and you have to take it off and start again at that point. So we'll do it just one more time. I'll pop a little bit of glue on the surface. Again, with a dry hand, I will place the star, and then I'll brush from the middle out to the points. And I'm taking my time on this one. Now, over the years, Dawn and I have made thousands of lanterns, and take it from us, this is not a stage you want to rush. You want to be enjoying the process of making your beautiful lantern, and part of the enjoyment with anything with art is it should never be done in a hurry. The one last thing to mention with these shadows is less is more. Don't cover it completely in lots and lots of designs, otherwise you won't see the light shining through there. You want that contrast between light and shade in order to give your shapes some more importance. And obviously I will go on to decorate all three sides of my lantern. And here's an example we made earlier. The last thing to consider when working with lanterns for a parade is that you don't want the lanterns all being dragged along at ground level. So ideally you want them up in the air so people can see them. So for this we use handles. Now to make a handle you will need a few things. First of all, a short piece of just ordinary wire, like craft wire, some scissors, a short roll of tape and a bamboo stick. Just one word of warning with bamboo, if you do see any large splinters, just use a tiny bit of tape, snip it off, and if you do find a splinter like this one, just cover it up. Because there's nothing worse in the middle of a lantern parade than getting a splinter in your thumb. Now, to turn this into a handle, we're going to start with the wire. What I'm going to do is bend it in half just over my thumb, like so, to create a loop. Then on either end, I'm just going to bend it up. So you've got two bits sticking out at the edges, like so. And this will help us in a moment, as you'll see. Now on the end of the bamboo stick, I'm going to place the loop near the end. So it should be just big enough to get my finger through there without trapping it. Then I take the end of my tape and I wrap it around a couple of times, nice and tightly. You'll notice I haven't cut the tape off yet. There's a good reason for that. Now with these two ends, I fold them up. And I then wrap them in nice and tightly. And the reason we have the ends folded up and then wrapped in is so that the loop does not slip out from underneath your tape. Once we've got to that stage, we can then cut the tape off, just squeeze in, and if there are any other little bits of wire sticking up, we just fold them back down. And this creates your handle. If we bring it back to any lantern that we've made already, we can attach this here either using a pipe cleaner or a cable grip. So your lantern will be held at a nice height for your parade.